Frank Gaffney joins me now, the founder and president of the Center for Security Policy. Frank, it's good to have you back on the program. Tell me about what's going on with David Petraeus and the comments that he's made about the president being unfit to serve.
Well, Lars, it's an interesting thing. David Petraeus, of course, has had a pretty remarkable career, much of it in uniform, rising to the rank of a four-star general, became one of the best known of his era for his work in Iraq and Afghanistan. He then went into a rather bad patch as the director of the Central Intelligence Agency under Barack Obama, ultimately was forced to resign in disgrace and charged with criminal activity, to which he pleaded guilty. Nonetheless, Donald Trump, I think probably in part because he felt respect for the man as a general and some sympathy for how he was handled during the Obama years, took him into his council. In fact, I think seriously considered him for the Secretary of State, and most especially listened very favorably to recommendations that David Petraeus was making for senior national security personnel. This is all by way of prelude to what happened last week at the Aspen Institute summer, I think of it as sort of a gab fest. And he was on a panel and was asked about, the president and how he's doing. And David Petraeus chose to speak almost entirely about what a wonderful team of people he'd assembled. He didn't say that, but effectively that was the case. He was talking about the national security team that was hired by Donald Trump at, in many cases at least, David Petraeus' recommendation. But the moderator of the panel pressed him and said, well, all right, so he's got a good team, and we get that, but is he fit to serve? And this is the thing that I think was pretty appalling. David Petraeus could not bring himself to say yes. He didn't say no exactly, but it was pretty clear, as was pointed out by the Washington Post in a sort of after the action report, that the absence of an affirmative answer
is effectively a negative.
Unmistakably was a negative, and played into sort of a narrative that is now being pushed by the Democrats that the president simply doesn't, measure up and therefore should be removed from office. I think this is regrettable, as frankly have been quite a number of the recommendations David Petraeus has made both on personnel and on policy.
Well, you just saw that, I think it was, some of this happened a couple of days ago, but the VA, Trump fires 500, puts 200 on suspension. It's time to start calling people on this, and saying, if you're serving the president directly as an advisor, you can't very well go out and lead people to believe that you don't think he's fit to serve. And yeah. Frankly, I don't know how you define what fit to serve is. We seem to have this litmus test up till Donald Trump that said, well, if you spend enough time in a governor's office or the Senate or the House or some other political position, that makes you fit to serve. I mean, look at Barack Obama. I mean, the guy had a record of 0 accomplishments. He'd written a couple of books. He graduated from some top schools. He'd been a community organizer. He'd wasted a lot of Annenberg Foundation money. But other than that, he didn't. And I'm not sure during his tenure that he showed that he was fit to serve. And yet that question, I can't remember. There might have been a reporter who asked the question, is President Obama fit to be president after, the mess-ups in the Department of Justice, Fast and Furious, and all the other scandals that came with it. And yet I don't remember a single reporter saying, is President Obama fit to serve? But they've been asking this question about Donald Trump since November the 8th.
Yeah, well, and increasingly insistently, and it's not, of course, just the press that's doing it. It's the Democratic Party and its various outliers. And the thing is, Lars, as you know, you're looking at a man who was elected by the people of the United States, who deemed him fit to lead them. Yep. A lot of people didn't, to be sure, and they're very unhappy about it. But I think that he has by and large, not without some missteps, to be sure, including, among other things, some of the recommendations on policy that came from people like David Petraeus, which he accepted. But by and large, I think that he's acquitting himself pretty darn well. And the answer is, of course, he's fit to serve, and we need to give him a chance to do so with his own team of people. Aside from the handful that have been put in place so far, the Democrats, as you know, have been slow-rolling virtually all of his appointments. So what we have is a president who is saddled overwhelmingly by people who were either hired by that man who I think you could legitimately say was unfit to serve, Barack Obama, or were, brought in as civil servants and simply are part of the permanent bureaucracy, the vast majority of whom, again, are really pretty hostile to this president.
See,
so
and here's
hard for him to succeed.
Here's the thing that I think we should go back to, and then I want to spend a couple of minutes on this transformer explosion. But I think there's an easy answer for folks like Petraeus and others. You can say, well, the Constitution has three primary requirements to run for president, and once the American people have made the choice, I think it is not in keeping with the Constitution. I'm not saying unconstitutional, but not in keeping with it to say, well, the American people made the choice. He met the three criteria set up by the Constitution. Yes, he is the appropriate choice, and yes, he's fit to serve because the American people have the right to make that decision through the process we've created, even with the Electoral College and everything else. It's their right to choose a leader. And I guess I think it's out of line for people to say, well, he's not fit to serve. Now, if he were to suffer some malady, if he were shot as Reagan was, if he was, if he had to be put under anesthesia for a while, as I think Bush was for a bit, that you could say, well, somebody should take his place for that short time until we determine if he can continue. But other than that, where does anybody get off saying, well, this guy is not fit to serve because you don't think he's fit to serve? Now, let me ask you about this transformer explosion in L.A. that put 140,000 people without power. You see this as a wake-up call about the fragile nature of the infrastructure that supports our life here in the United States.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot over the years, Lars. As you know, this is the dirty little secret of American power in the 21st century, and I mean that in both the literal and the figurative sense. It is dependent upon a very fragile infrastructure. And the trouble is that enemies of this country understand, most Americans are unaware of this, but enemies of this country understand very well that if they could deny us electrical power, life as we know it in this 21st century America would come to a screeching halt, literally, as well as figuratively.
I mean, water stops, sewage stops. Water stops, sewage stops, refrigeration stops, medical machines stop. A lot of people die, literally could die in the first minutes or hours after a big power outage.
Indeed, a sustained one, exactly, yeah. And that's the problem. If the wake-up call of this one transformer that, fortunately, they were able to do a workaround after about 12 hours, and the 140,000 people who had a very unpleasant 12 hours, got their air conditioning back on, and their foods presumably made it, and all the rest. If that were to take place, not just on a 12-hour period or even a couple of days, but for weeks or months, and over large parts of the country, it can be a nation-ending problem for us. So the wake-up call, I hope, and there's some signs of this, that President Trump and his team are seized with the dangers of a vulnerable, non-resilient electrical grid. And
very good point. Frank Gaffney from the CSP.